there, everyone. I hope you are all having a wonderful week. I know that some of you just finished up exams, so I'm praying that you did well on them and you feel confident that you did well. And I hope you can enjoy a little bit of relaxing before going back to school tomorrow. So we just finished up with our For You From You program, where we talked about the final 5 commandments and how we can apply them to our lives as members of the Catholic faith. And we've also talked about how they serve more as a way of granting freedom, of giving us the ability to do what we want, rather than being rules, a set of rules that just tell us what we can and cannot do. So since we finished that, we're now going to transition into our next series called Now and Forever, which focuses on the Mass. So before we begin, I have a question for you. If you could go back in time to any time period, what would it be and why? If you could go back in time to any time period, what one would you choose and why? So I really want you to think about this. Maybe you choose a time period that's particularly interesting to you, or you choose a time period that you don't really know about, and you want to know more about, and you want to see what it was like to live in that time period. I think for me, I would choose the Renaissance era, just for the fact of like the artwork and the music and like the creative side of the Renaissance era was so interesting to me, and not just for like, you know, kings and queens and princesses and the fancy dresses and the castles, right? So I think I would choose the Renaissance era to go back to. But here is a crazy idea for you. Did you know that every time we go to Mass, we go back in time? So you may be wondering, how do we even do that? Well, the same Mass that we celebrate came from Jesus and his disciples, and the celebration of the Last Supper, in which they celebrated his passion and death on the cross. And even more, the elements of the Mass go all the way back to early Egypt and the time of the pharaohs, to an event called the Exodus. The actual meal that Jesus and his disciples ate at the Last Supper took place during the Passover feast. But to simplify a rather long story, Passover commemorates when Moses led God's people to freedom from slavery in Egypt. Passover is one of the most important moments in Jewish history, and the Jewish people celebrate it every year to remember what God did for them when he brought them out of slavery. So I have another question for all of you. I want you to think of some of your favorite things to eat. A lot of you have talked about how you love candy, or pasta, or pizza, and those type of things. But I want you to think about all of your favorite foods. And if you could have a whole feast with every single food you love to eat is right there in front of you. I think for me, it would be just all comfort food. So the fried chicken and the mashed potatoes and the gravy and all of that. I just really love comfort food. But when we think of our favorite meals and what we would choose to be our last meal ever to eat, we think of those things. We think of a feast made up of all our favorite foods. The last meal Jesus chose was to celebrate with his followers before his death, and it was the Passover meal. Jesus, however, gives it a brand new meaning. He gives Passover this new vision, this new meaning of what it really is and the meaning behind it. So after the Israelites were freed from slavery, they soon forgot all that God had done for them. Time and time again, God's people failed to return to him. And by their own power, they could not fix their relationship with God. So God sent his only Son, Jesus Christ, to once and for all save us from the slavery of sin. At the Last Supper, Jesus doesn't follow the normal routine of a typical Passover meal. When it comes time to break the bread and share from the cup, Jesus says something quite different from the normal prayers. So we are going to be reading Luke chapter 22, verses 19 through 20. And when he had taken some bread and given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." So when Jewish people celebrated the Passover, they placed the blood of a sacrificial lamb on the door so death would pass over them. That's what the literal word Passover means. And at the Last Supper and through his passion and death on the cross, Jesus becomes the sacrificial lamb, our sacrificial lamb, and saves us from the slavery and eternal death through his blood. So he's giving himself, he's giving his body as a sacrifice to our sins, just like the sacrificial lamb was used as a sacrifice to death, that death would pass over them. So similar to the way that the Israelites celebrated the Passover as a memorial of their freedom from Egypt, Catholics celebrate the Mass as the memorial for our freedom from sin and bought by Christ's passion, death, and resurrection. So whenever we participate in the Mass, we remember that Jesus gave his life for the whole world. The word Catholic actually means universal. And this means that the Church's mission of sharing Christ is meant for the whole world. The Mass is celebrated in the same way across the entire world. This is just one example of how our Church is universal. So I'm curious to know if any of you have been to a Mass that is given in another language. So I went to Mexico in 2018 and went to Mass every weekend there while I visited. And they did everything the same, but they also had some traditions that were different from what we do here in the United States. Particularly, they don't drink from the chalice of, the blood of Christ. They don't drink that. They just receive the Eucharist. They also use like a communion plate, which they put underneath you in case you drop the Eucharist on the floor and they have to be able to catch it. But they also do take a little bit of time at the end of Mass to pray with Mary, which we particularly don't do during our Masses. But they have this deep connection to her in that Latin American culture. And it's really interesting to watch and see the similarities and differences between the cultures. So while cultures may add in elements specific to their traditions, the structure and essential elements of the Mass, they all stay the same. It's beautiful to see how our Church has kept the most sacred parts of Christ's life intact. We are able to live and experience them today, no matter where we are in the world. So with all of the different time zones around the world and with all the different times people celebrate Mass, there is always someone celebrating and commemorating Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection. So whenever we celebrate the Mass, we participate in remembering the most important moment in history, when we are led once and for all out of slavery and given the path of hope for eternal life. So that is it for today's lesson. What I want you guys to do is that I gave your parents some small group questions that I want you to take some time going through. And I don't want you just to read them by yourself. I want you to find your brothers and sisters or whoever's in your house and gather them together and go through these questions and really answer them and prepare yourself for next week when we'll take some time and go over them. So that is it for today's lesson. And I hope you guys have a great day. God bless.